Okay, what is up, folks? It is 9 a.m. on the 11th of August. We've got a great guest here. This is Georgia Politics. This is your Peach State update. And we have Dr. Rich McCormick in the House this morning. He's running for election to the United States House to represent Georgia's 6th Congressional District. And he's on the ballot for the general election on the 8th. He'll be going against Bob Christian of the DNC. Dr. McCormick lives in Suwanee, Georgia. He served in the U.S. Marine Corps and the Navy, earned an MBA from National University and MD from Morehouse. His career experience includes working as an emergency medical physician with Gwinnett Medical Center and Northside Hospital. He was also a Marine officer instructor with Georgia Tech and Morehouse College, and he's a pilot. And he served on the front lines against COVID-19 as an emergency room doctor. Dr. McCormick has never been afraid of a fight, whether it's communist China abroad or the radical left. And he's had over 20 years in the Marine Corps and Navy, serving in combat zones in Africa, the Persian Gulf, and Afghanistan. And we're going to talk a bit about that as well and some legislative priorities. Dr. McCormick was just at CPAC as well, so should be a great chat this morning. Thanks for coming on the show this morning, Dr. McCormick.
Thanks. Good to be here today.
Of course, sir. And I saw you just were at CPAC in Texas about reviving America. You want to talk about that trip? How did that go for you, sir? What did you cover there?
It was great to see a bunch of great allies out there. I spoke specifically with Ronnie Jackson on stage. We were talking about, they're making a comparison between America being sick and two ER docs. Ronnie Jackson was the president's physician, as you may recall. I actually knew him when I was in the Navy. My boss was one of his best friends from way back when. They both grew up in medicine and in the Navy together. I came in late because I'm a late life convert. When I grew up, I was a Marine. I still think of myself as a Marine more than I think of myself as a doc. But I did 16 years in the Marine Corps as a pilot, then switched over, did some airborne time with the 101st, and did some time overseas with the ROK Marines in Korea. Did several tours in Africa, Persian Gulf, and Afghanistan. But when I became a Navy ER doc, I finished up on a Marine Corps base on the East Coast, and that's where I met Ronnie Jackson. It was nice to reunite with him in CPAC in Dallas. And just a lot of fine patriots out there. We got to talk about reviving America. America has a lot of things wrong with it right now. One of the things that we're really concerned about that really came to a head this week was the overreach of government. When you have a billionaire, a former president who can be unjustly treated, it's scary times in America. We've already seen the IRS misbehave. We remember when Obama was president and they were unjustly targeting conservative groups with tax and with the IRS. And when you do that and nobody gets punished, there's no accountability, no letter of reprimand, nobody got put in jail, nobody got fired, that just went away. And now you want to increase the IRS size by over 80,000 agents. I have CPAs right now that can't defend us right now. You can have a person who professionally does taxes and they cannot be empowered over a government agency of some guy straight out of college who's given a badge and a gun to take your money forcefully and say, you did it wrong and you're guilty until proven innocent. Anybody who's been mistreated by the tax code or by the IRS knows this. There's very little accountability. They're not the pros. They're just the people who are in power. I call it a lance corporal with a badge. I mean, they can tell anybody what to do because they've been empowered by an overreaching government to mistreat you, and you have very little recourse. That should be scary. Anytime the FBI, the IRS, any three-letter organization, EPA, anybody who can come into your business, overregulate you, overtax you, and tell you what to do, even though you're the one that's taking all the risk to make America what it is today.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent, sir. And I wanted to ask about uniting the Republican Party. Post-primary, as we're under 3 months here to the general election. It's kind of been a bit of a civil war going on in the GOP, not just in the Peach State, it seems. But yeah, did you want to talk about that a bit, sir?
Yeah, I think the Republicans in general have got to get united. We got to stop with the name calling, whether you want to call somebody a rhino or a crazy. The different portions of our Republican Party all have their part to play. Reagan famously used to say, look, if you agree with 80% of the things that I'm trying to get done, you're on my side. It's a Christian value too, by the way. Christ said, if you're if you're for me, you can't be against me. And we need to be for each other. The Republican Party, we can't all be the same. In a church, not everybody agrees with everything the minister says. If you have everybody in a church that agrees with everything the minister says, it's called a cult. We're not a cult. We're a party. We're a representative party. And when your representative is different than the other representative, that's okay, because most of us want the same thing. We want a free country that has built the greatest republic, the greatest nation the world's ever seen. And it's in jeopardy right now. And we have a common enemy, and it's not each other. There's way too much bickering, way too much backbiting. This isn't about one person. This is about a party, about a people, about empowering us to do what's right, to grab back power from a government that's been basically overreaching and is the enemy, is the government. And it can be weaponized by either side of the party. And that's not good, because we keep on cheering when our side is in charge because we can do what we want to. And then we fret when their side is in charge. It shouldn't even be about who's in charge. The people should be in charge. That's the way our constitutional republic was set up, is to empower people over government. That's a unique thought. We've gotten spoiled in America to think that this is the norm. We are the exception. We're the country who literally set up our government to have a balance of power so that the people wouldn't be overrun by an overly effective government. We want an ineffective. We want a limited government that moves solely, that's limited by the way it's designed, so that we, the people, can prosper. Because when you empower a people, you do prosper. Of course, you have to have a stronger central government to protect the people, to have a national defense. But by and large, empowering the people is what we should be all about. And that's something we should be able to carry the banner together, instead of calling each other names. And as we have a discussion, look, if I'm going to have you vote for my bill, and we need to be united to vote, pass a bill, I can't start the conversation with you're a moron. I can't start the conversation with calling you a name and then expect you to be my friend when we're trying to pass something together. We have to get over that. We have to understand that we're going to have some disagreements. We got to be adults. Too often a time, Congress, we act like we're in high school again, and we're dividing up our church and splitting the church. We need to be a united front when we move forward.
Excellent. And I wanted to ask Dr. McCormick about failed foreign policy and woke military policy. Obviously, as a veteran yourself, I think you have a great view on this. Not only as a veteran, but the fact that you have served overseas. How do you see the foreign policy and military policy recently? Obviously, we had the Afghanistan withdrawal, which I think I can tie into this question, and then the conflict in Ukraine as well. So wherever you want to take it, sir.
Yeah, I'll start with Afghanistan. That was a dark day for a guy who spent 9 months away from my family just to serve overseas, and then to basically have my face spit in by the current administration. The way that they did that was horrible. I'm probably on the outside when I say I think we should still be there in limited capacity. We had about 2,500 people in Afghanistan, and the country was stabilized. We had the Taliban at arm's length. We had ISIS on the run. We had a democracy, an ineffective government, but we at least had a democracy over there with a representative government to some extent, where the women were free to prosper and be part of the representation, to vote, to be educated, to be part of the solution rather than now part of the problem. We basically pulled out without any idea what we're doing. We cost some men and women their lives. 5 of the kids that died over there, and I say kids because my oldest is the same age as the people who died, the 5 of those people who died on that day that we were bombed. All that could have been avoided. When I was there in 2016 as a head of emergency medicine in Kandahar, I'll tell you, Kabul was safer than Chicago. Put that in perspective and think about what that means. You had a country that had been in turmoil. Yes, we had a lot of problems, so a lot of corruption. And that's always a problem with a new government, where you have warlords and politicians fighting over money, and some of it not spread around very well and not getting to the people. But you had a government that at least was working, if not against the bad guys, at least not against the United States of America. Now you have a government that's basically a theocracy that's going to be working actively against our best interests, who have subjugated half their population to slavery, essentially, as women. that will not allow them to be educated. And this is a country that most people have never been to and most people don't know much about. Back in the 50s and 60s, women were very much on par with American women. They had bouffant hairdos and skirts, and they worked in offices, and they were free to intermingle with the rest of the populace. Now they're literally rolling around in burqas, and if you try to educate your kids, you could actually be killed. That is a scary thing, and we gave all that up in just a few days because of our horrible administrative policies, especially towards the military. And I think there should have been some heads up rule. I mean, think about the tens of thousands of people who have had their lives affected by this. Millions of us, every American has had the Afghan war touch them in some way, shape, or form. We've had people lose their lives. We've had people lose their limbs. We've had people spend years away from their family because of that war. And now it's all gone. We're right back where we started. Trillions of dollars later, lives spent, and we left without even a murmur other than just to embarrass ourselves, which puts us in a very precarious space moving forward. Now, what's the world to think of us if that's the way we execute a war that takes a decade and then we lose, and we lose big? It was embarrassing. So shame on them for not having a better idea what they're doing. I don't care if Milley wasn't calling the shots or not. You don't execute a plan that has no possible way of success. And they knew it wasn't going to succeed. That was just all political expediency rather than doing the right thing. I'm very concerned about what they're doing with the military. Love to be part of oversight in that. The wokeness is never going to save military. It's going to get people killed. Our mission in the Marine Corps was always to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy through fire and maneuver, or to repel the enemy's attack through fire and close combat. That is our mission. Stop with everything else. I don't want to hear about. I don't want to talk about transgenderism. I don't want to talk about acceptance. I don't want to talk about race. All that stuff is on the sidelines. In the Marine Corps, we're all green. We're all shades of green. We all bleed red. I didn't even refer to a black guy as a black guy. It's like he's dark green. I mean, we're all green. It doesn't matter. We don't care about race. I care about surviving this mission and putting an end to bad people. That's what the Marines are good at. Stop with all the rest of the stuff because it's going to get people killed and make us an ineffective fighting force. And meanwhile, the enemy is talking about warriors. We're talking about wokeness. It's a horrible idea. The CRT has no place in the military unless it's the CRT I grew up with, was the combat readiness test. That's the CRT that matters in the military. Stop with everything else. And when you talk about Ukraine, by the way, I know you asked about that. Ukraine is something I'm not willing to commit my sons to. I got two sons that want to be Marines. One that wants to be a Marine Corps pilot. We just went and saw Top Gun together. As a matter of fact, I saw Top Gun my senior year of high school. This is his senior year of high school, so very nostalgic. And I'll tell you, I don't want my sons going to Ukraine. It's not necessary, first of all, and I don't think it's a wise use of that sort of capital, the American lives. That said, I don't like what the Soviet Union is, the Russia is doing, which is becoming the Soviet Union. The guy who's leading their country, Putin, is the former KGB head. And if you don't think he wants to make it back into the Soviet Union, you're mistaken. All the things he's been gearing up for, whether it be when he took Crimea during the last Olympics, or when he's invaded Ukraine right after this Olympics, this is all by plan. It's a nefarious plot to expand the Russian influence over the Eastern Bloc countries. It does need to be fought against. I do think we can very effectively invest a tactical and strategical amount of assets to keep them and win this war. This is a determined enemy. When I talk about Ukraine, Ukraine is a determined enemy versus Russia. They will win this war, especially if we give them some weapon systems that equalize the playing field, such as HIMARS, which is the mobile missile trucks. Those things go about $5.1 million per pop. I know it sounds like a lot of money. That's a drop in the bucket for the American GDP and what we invest in foreign. And by the way, anybody who thinks we should be isolationist, don't get involved in anybody else's affairs. If we did that, everything that Trump did that was effective in foreign policy would not have been able to be achieved. If we didn't have influence over Turkey by the money we spent there, he could not have kept them out of Syria. That was a brilliant move on his part to keep us out of a war. It saved us money and American lives because we invested in Turkey, even though Turkey's not the greatest ally. Because we have an effective relationship and an investment with Saudi Arabia and Israel, we were able to broker the most effective peace treaty in history, in world history, between the Arabs and Israelis the way that Trump did it with Oman, Yemen, UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Israel, through marrying them up economically, which was brilliant. Nobody else thought about that. That was the most brilliant foreign policy I've ever seen by a president. And he did it because we do invest in foreign countries. If you're an isolationist, realize you lose all your effective control in foreign policy if you don't spend money overseas. We spend less than 2% of our GDP in foreign investments. It gives us an amazing amount of power and influence that we need in order to broker these peace deals and keep us, Americans, out of war, to save our children and to save us ultimately a lot of money. And if you think that isolation works, look at any country that has isolated itself historically. They've always failed as a world power. We are a world power. If you want to keep America at the top of the heap, you have to invest in foreign countries. That's foreign policy in its reality. China back in the 1400s had circumnavigated the world before Magellan. They had the richest empire in the world, and they became isolationists during the Mandarin dynasty, and they went into obscurity. For several hundred years, they paid the price, and now they're trying to get back to prominence by how? Investing in the rest of the world. If we don't invest, they will. They're the evil empire we need to fight against, and if we're not strong, we're going to be the ones run over by this new empire.
Excellent. A couple questions I want to build off of what you just mentioned there, sir. Just with Ukraine, what do you think the cap, or maybe salary cap, if you want to use a sports term, should be for aid and funding we should or could give to the Ukrainians? How much is too much? How much is not enough? Would you say? I don't know if you
so
have
that's a pretty
figure in mind.
Yeah, this is an arbitrary number when you talk about millions and billions of dollars, because most of us can't even comprehend what that means, right? We don't think in those terms, but when we talk in government, we throw around those numbers like it's cool. We just lost $87 billion worth of equipment, and a lot of it brand new in Afghanistan. Wouldn't it have been nice to have transferred that straight over to the Ukraine efforts? So $87 billion was left behind in Ukraine after probably trillions of dollars were spent in Afghanistan in a losing effort. One of the problems we've always had in war, especially limited warfare, whether it be in Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, when you fight limited warfare or guerrilla warfare, it doesn't work well when you go half-ass. It draws out a war for decades, and the enemy never comes to his knees. Every time we've been successful, whether it be in Vietnam with Rolling Thunder 2, or in Korea where we went into Incheon, or when it's been in Afghanistan or Iraq when we had surges, and all of a sudden the enemy says, whoa, I want no part of America. When it brings its forces, nobody wants a part of this country. Nobody wants to go against the American military fighting forces, which are the most fierce, well-disciplined, well-supplied, well-informed forces in the world. Nobody wants to go against us when we unleash the hounds, so to speak. Same thing with these missile systems. If you look at, I'll make an analogy between medicine and a war. If you take one pill a day to cure a bacterial infection, or sorry, one pill every other day, you'll have an ineffective cure of that disease. You'll prolong it. You'll get resistant bacteria, and it'll take a long time. If you end up spending more money on that antibiotic over a longer period of time and having an ineffective cure of that disease process. Just like we've done with every war, we draw it out, because we think we can have a controlled, limited warfare and it's going to end well. It's never ended war. And anything I've taught and learned in command and staff school and war college, all these schools that teach military leaders how to end a war, we get back to what's called Clausewitzian warfare, which is unleashing the powers that you can do to end the war quickly. It'll keep the political support high. You'll end it fast. Yes, there'll be some collateral damage, but guess what? There's always going to be collateral damage in any war. That's just the way it is. But you get it over quickly, and you make it very, very painful for an enemy to proceed, and then they will submit, and they will come to the table and bargain, if nothing else, if not to submit. And we can't just piecemeal this stuff. If we do 40 billion now, and then 20 billion later, and another 20 billion, pretty soon we're up in the trillions again, because we piecemealed it, and it's going to last for years, and then who knows if we're going to win. But we can have this thing over by Christmas if we do a big investment now. And I'm not talking about an unaccountable investment now. I'm not talking about padding the pocketbooks of different defense industry people. I'm talking about HIMARS systems, about javelin systems, about Stinger systems that would bring the Russians to their knees, because we know where their command structure is. We know we can use coordinated effects through drones and these high value missile systems to really equal the playing field with a very determined Ukrainian military and militia that can put an end to this and make the Russians realize this isn't tolerable and this is not going to work, and then it's over. I'm not going to put a number on it, because the question is, how effective and efficient is the government's budget going to be when we do these? And too often at times, there's a lot of pork barrel spending. I want to make sure we're laser focused on making sure the right missile systems, the right weapon systems get into the hands of the Ukrainians to be deployed with accountability and with strategic and tactical soundness in mind. And that I don't want to put a price tag on, because like I said, a bigger price tag now may result in a very smaller price tag later, and really shore up another ally rather than another enemy in that region that's so important to us.
Okay, excellent, Doctor. And then you alluded to the raid on President Trump's compound or his residence in Mar-a-Lago earlier in the conversation. And many Republicans, well known, I think both in the Peach State and nationally, have actually called for the abolishment of the FBI. But generally speaking, you mentioned the three-letter agencies. We can talk about just the FBI or generally. Would you abolish the FBI, or how would you curtail, that sort of bureaucratic misuse of power and the kind of the misuse of power within the intelligence agencies?
Well, first of all, let's have a realistic conversation, please. Too often at times, this is why we're not united, is because we get so excited and we want to say these things that sound great on sound bites that are not realistic, nor are they helpful to the conversation. The FBI, and I have many friends from the Marines that serve with the FBI. The FBI has kept us safe over a couple decades since 9/11. It is a miracle that we have not had more terrorist attacks in the United States since 9/11. They've been plotting against our good nation since that time constantly, and yet we haven't had another tower incident. We haven't had the Pentagon blown up. We haven't had military installations blown up. We think about the water supply, about the electrical grids, about the military institutions, about our government and financial centers that have not been tampered with in a major way since 9/11 because of the CIA and FBI. So let's not get crazy and say we need to get rid. That's like saying defund the police. Think about what you're saying. Let's get rid of the FBI. That's like saying defund the police. Are there bad actors in the FBI? Of course. Let's weed it out. Let's make it efficient. Let's make it accountable. Let's make sure that they can't overreach. If you want to get rid of somebody, don't get rid of the FBI. Get rid of the IRS. Let's go to a flat tax. Let's go to a fair tax. Let's go into something that lobbyists can't tamper with. Let's get rid of an organization that has none of our best will at hand, where you can take an organization and expand it by 80,000 plus, give them a badge and a gun, and tell them that they have authority, and then they know better than my CPA, who basically for a living takes care of my taxes. And they say, nope, you're wrong. We're going to take your money anyways, and you have no accountability. You have no way to fight back against this IRS. And oh, by the way, that's what Obama did when he investigated Tea Party people and conservative people. And by the way, have you heard of one person that's got a letter of reprimand, who's gone to jail, or who's been fired when Obama used the IRS against us? One person, name them, because I haven't heard of it. And that's the agency you want to expand by over 80,000 agents to have authority over the best trained CPAs in America because they have a badge and a gun? That should be scarier than the FBI even. Now, the FBI is egregious to us because we just saw them invade a former president's house and somebody who's a billionaire. And if he can't protect himself, that should scare all of us. But quite frankly, we've all been picked on by the IRS already. If you don't think that our basic rights are being trampled on by the American government, which is overreaching, and it doesn't have to be just them, but it could be the EPA. It could be the Department of Energy, the Department of Education. Think about what they're trying to do to our American kids through the education system and brainwashing them, through the business world by making sure you have an EI or an EO officer that's telling us how to think. And now they're doing it with the military too, where you actually have somebody training our kids to think a certain way, and it's all about a bigger government, and you have to have groupthink. You can't have individuality. This is communism 101. This is scary stuff. But let's not just identify FBI agents and say they're the bad guys. we have a government problem. It's not an FBI problem.
Excellent, sir. And then just one little addendum there. So would you say, would you go as far as to say is get rid of the IRS, or
well, if you have a better
reduce
tax
it?
system, I'm a guy who believes in a fair tax. I'm a guy who believes in a consumption tax, because there's no way to screw with that. If you're a lobbyist, what are you going to do? How are you going to get special favor? How are you going to spend $1 million on congressmen to save yourself $1 billion in taxation? You can't. The tax code right now is so convoluted that the average CPA can't do it correctly. I was at a fundraiser last night for the governor, and I was talking to several CPAs, and they all said, you take 5 different tax returns and you give it to another CPA, they can criticize each other and find problems with it. And what do you think? And those are pros, because what do you think a non-CPA with a badge and a gun who just came out of college, who was empowered over all these other people and companies, is going to do once they're given the power and there's no accountability? Are 80,000 people going to go to their congressman and say, we have a problem? Yes, they probably will, but what am I going to be able to do when you have a government that's far too powerful? So yeah, I would love to get rid of the IRS or at least shrink it greatly by having a consumption tax that can't be tampered with. One that's not based on unfair practices or an overly complicated system, but actually one that's based on how much you buy is how much you pay. And that's how you make it even. Oh, we should pay our fair share of taxes. Well, rich people buy more, but they also get more write-offs too. Remember, the rich people, the reason that they have the perception of not paying their taxes is because they have tax code that protects the way they spend and get taxed. And so it goes back to the middle class that gets overwhelmed because the lower class, quite frankly, don't pay much taxes. And so we continue to punish the middle class by saying we're going to punish the upper class. And the dirty little secret is far more billionaires contribute to the Democrat Party than the Republican Party. We need to get that word out there, by the way. We're not the bad guys. We're the good guys. We're the ones representing the people who want to become billionaires, but are being stopped by the people who are in control. The aristocracy of the United States, who have the money in the bank, who cannot be taxed, because you cannot tax money that's already earned and in the bank unless, of course, you do a consumption tax. And this is where we have to get right and understand how taxes work and why it's not a good idea to empower a government more over its people.
Excellent, Dr. McCormick. I want to be respectful of your time, and I know you have a busy day today. Any final thoughts, sir, that we didn't address this morning? And then where can people find you and support you if they want to do so?
So it's Rich McCormick, McCormick just like the spice, .us is my website. Talks all about what we are. This is going to be final thoughts. I'm just going to say, be hopeful. I'm very bullish about the future of our country, about our Congress. If we take 34 seats back, this will be the largest majority we've had since the Great Depression. That's exciting times. It's bigger than the 2010 class, bigger than the 1994 class as far as its majority census. And I think we have a record number of minorities, women, and veterans running for Congress in the Republican Party right now. Never been this many. And the amount of talent and diversity coming in to Congress is exciting. You're going to have a great number of people with a diverse background that have great ideas to get back to this constitutional republic that's going to make us successful into the future. I'm very excited about this class. I'm excited about the future. Realize I know we're going through inflation, high energy costs, a proxy war with Russia, hatred of the police, hatred of the military, racial tensions, but we've been through all this before. It's called the 70s. We can get back to the 80s. We can get back to prosperity. We can get back to a popular control of the government and win a popular election for the first time in 20 years if we do this right. But the message has got to be a united one that brings Americans together, that empowers them, that doesn't demonize people. We got to stop calling people names. If you want to convert them from Democrat or independent to Republican, you start with a loving message, one that's hopeful for them and their children, and we'll get this done.
Excellent. Awesome. Great. Thank you, Dr. McCormick. I hope we can do this again. And your team can always reach out to me whenever they so desire. This will be available YouTube, Twitter, Rockfin. And if anybody wants to check out Dr. McCormick, he's also on Twitter, so people can check us out there as well. This has been your Peach State Update, Georgia Politics, GA Poll. Stay frosty, folks, and we'll see everybody next time.